Hey everybody, Gregg Bendian here at the ProgCast. Don't forget to look us up on Patreon and like and subscribe. We always like to hear from you. I love hearing from you at bendianmusic.com. And very, very excited and very pleased to welcome back a friend who's just one of my favorite people, much less favorite musicians. He's got a new album out on BrainFeEDER, which you got to hear, Les Jardin Mystique. And it's taken many hours of work and really, I know a little bit about the backstory on this, which we're going to hear about from my friend Miguel Atwood-Ferguson. Hi, Miguel.
Hey Greg, good to see you. Thank you so much for having me.
Good to have you back. We always have good chats, don't we?
Man, we do well together.
Yeah, we do. So, Miguel, talk to me a little bit about this project because it's a massive undertaking, which I know it was culled from hundreds of hours of material, and you're always searching and you're always looking for that sound. And I remember last time we hung out in LA, you were listening to everything being played backwards and listening to the sounds of things in reverse. So I know you're exploring. Tell me a little bit about that process.
Yeah, well, I love life, and I don't know what happens after this life, but I know I'm alive now. So I'm trying not to waste my life, and I'm trying to be as sincere as I can. And I will take as many day jobs as I need to in order to allow my time spent with music just to be as sincere as possible, not too precious, but just focusing on being genuine, and not trying to be popular, not trying to um, win awards or not even worry about money with my music, but just try to get to saying what am I trying to say with it. And I do think that's an infinite endeavor. Um, but I've been really enjoying recording my music, and I've worked on over 600 albums for other people, which I've really enjoyed to, through and through. Even the worst circumstances, I still enjoy those experiences so much, and I'm so grateful for those experiences. But when it comes to like my music, I'm like, okay, great. Now, since I've taken the pressure off of, like I said, trying to be popular and all that, um, what's something that might be interesting to me? And so these are things that are interesting to me, like trying to sculpt a narrative, not just spanning one album, but spanning 10 and a half hours. So it's three volumes, split into three and a half hour long volumes. And so I'm really enjoying this process of sculpting this narrative, as I say. And so I was lucky enough to grow up in a very diverse household, um, culturally and ethnically, that really celebrated the validity of every culture. And yes, there was an emphasis on Western European classical music, and Motown music and Jimi Hendrix and um, a lot of diverse music. But the point being that my father, Steve Ferguson, who's still alive, um, I think he's a genius composer, multi-instrumentalist, singer. He was playing everything for me in the house. From, on vinyl, cassette tapes, and then when CDs were invented in 1986, I was born in 1980, so I remember when with the advent of CDs, and he had all these amazing cassette tapes that he'd make, and we were lucky enough to grow up in Topanga, or I was lucky enough to grow up in Topanga Canyon, and so we had to do a fair amount of driving, and so you had these amazing cassette tapes, and he had all these amazing themes. Sometimes it'd just be like country, or then sometimes it'd just be, opera, or only Motown, or Americana, or Scott Joplin, or Charlie Parker, John Coltrane. I mean, it was all over the place, and so that was the backdrop, and so that was very. It seemed completely normal to me, Greg, to hear amazing music from all these different genres, and Louis Armstrong, spanning, many decades. And so diversity and, like I say, the validity of all these different cultures has been the foundation to my life. And so, yes, I might have like, favorite things that, tendencies or inclinations that I have, but still underneath everything, I have this curiosity and interest in history and antiquity, and just this fascination to, like, discover. And it took me many years to get rid of a negative tendency to put all these amazing people on pedestals, which I did the first 20 years of my life. And he wasn't, he didn't wish that for me. My father was playing all this music, but I kind of got into that mindset. I'm like, oh, wow, like Thelonious Monk, like John Coltrane. I'm like, well, they're so amazing. Here I am. I started on violin when I was 4, and I was very good at music my whole life, but and I practiced consistently, but I wasn't, I was usually like the best around, but I still wasn't like disciplined enough to be like incredibly good. I was just very proficient. And so there was this kind of, I don't know, negative spiral brewing, combining my lack of discipline and me putting other people up on pedestals. And so it led to depression. And thankfully, I worked things out, and I've been continuing to work things out. But now I realize, okay, everyone has their own bag, which I think is infinite. And if we find a way to work on ourselves and excavate our own, goodies, our own jewels, then, we're still not promised anything. But if, we have a little bit of luck, and if we're, we have the right attributes, there can be a glorious music. So I don't know if that answers your question at all.
You raise a really interesting point, which is that as musicians, we come up with repertoire. That's our window onto music, is the repertoire, the pedagogy, the radio, and all of these things come in. And I can tell you from my experience, I remember really being able to hear parts in pop songs probably around the age of 5 or 6. And then, really hearing things, hearing what was happening, hearing Revolver by the Beatles, and knowing, be able to sing some of the melodies. And then there's this point where we say, what are we going to do to synthesize all this stuff? What do I think of it? What could I do with it? Certainly the Beatles aren't the begin all and end all of everything. And so the hero worship thing, or the I am not worthy thing, I think we are in danger, as you say, of missing our own individuality and the importance of pushing yourself and saying, hey, that's fine, but what are you going to do about it?
That's it. And it's infinite. It's so great. But like once, not that we can necessarily have that realization and then, it's solidified forever.
Right.
But once we have that, really deep realization, what you just so beautifully said, then we can at least know that, okay, I do have it, and the way that I define it is just life itself. We're imbued with life. And so, I do think that we have our own potential genius, and I think we just have to figure out a way to continue to crack our own code. And so I love that ongoing study of figuring out, how do I, tick, and what do I really need to do today? And like learning about, priorities, and, in reference before we went on, we were talking about, families and raising children. And I mentioned blind spots and how it can be great having a child to reflect back to us things that we're not aware of, and also just teach and learn together, hopefully like in a safe environment.
Keeps me young being around young people. And I always know what's happening pretty quickly from either my son or my college students. And I remember college students and or my son being the first people to tell me about Thundercat or Hiatus Coyote. And I love that feed that I have into that because I'll always know what's going on as long as I'm sharing the old and they're sharing the new.
But that's so cool of you, though, because, how many people do you know just have no interest in what younger people might be interested in? And yes, yes, it's very, in my opinion, very fair to say that, especially like the older we get, we might have some type of, value system that matters to us that some young people have not had a chance yet to have enough time to master or even become aware of. And so if it's not present in their work, um, people that are older than a younger person, they might just write it off. So, serious respect to you to be able to see the validity of something that might not have some attributes that are also really important to you.
Well, it's easy, Miguel, and I'll tell you why. At a certain point, pretty young, probably around college, I thought to myself, I don't know how, but it was already happening. So it hit me. All music is equal.
Yes,
I just had that thing, I was like, oh,
yes,
do you think Schoenberg is more valid than Stevie Wonder? Let's calm down. So,
yes.
right? So
Well, I mean, that whole
the post-traumatic thing, I had to really set aside because it only could do so much for me. And I had gotten the face blast that I thought I was going to get from it. And it was fine. And it's still in there in the way I think of organizing pitches, et cetera. Form. But honestly, no, it's all music is equal. And we weren't taught that kind of, it was just sort of available to experience that because pop radio in the 60s and 70s was off the hook, tastemakers and people playing the hippest stuff on the radio and you're spoiled. Soundtracks, which you and I have a good connection with.
yeah.
And now it's so funny, Miguel. I'll bring it up since I know you don't mind, but Planet of the Apes, that soundtrack that you and I have really had such a amount of inspiration from. That's kind of like the whole attitude for me to this minute, which is that you're creating your own universe with your own sound world.
Yeah.
That's
But this
your
is
job.
Yes, but everything you're saying, tell me if you think differently, but everything you're saying to me is based upon this like core philosophy that I share. All music is equal. Um, I study music every day, and I try to study in a way that makes me more open-minded and more open-hearted. But I love the fact that some 11-year-old in their bedroom with just a computer can very possibly make a lot of music that's much more captivating than music I make. And I'm comforted by that. And, the whole thing of, music and art is subjective, right? I think it comes back to that. And yes, there are certain like objective truths, but at the end of the day, like if we're so disconnected with ourselves where we can't just celebrate the art and the things that resonate with us and be okay with that, regardless if somebody else thinks it, whatever they think about it, I think it comes back to that. So, do you think that's also related to this conversation?
I do. And there's another point I wanted to bring in from our dear departed friend, bassist Doug Lunn, which was the idea that there's pre-conventional, conventional, and post-conventional. And you could look at cooking that way. You could look at dance that way. you can look at film that way. And so when you see these things that sort of cut across all art forms, I like to say that, you know, yes, we're making music, but we're also making sonic art. We're making art with sounds,
Mm.
ideally.
Yeah. Yeah, but when you say music is equal, like I love everything that sparks in me, and I think all people are equal.
Right.
Not just, all music, but to me, it's activating everything, we just said. And I just love the invitation. I feel like there's this infinite invitation from the universe to continue to get in touch with our own, what I would call our infinite self. And if we're too caught up with peer pressure, um, or any of the banter, from other people, regardless of how much we, respect them, I think we can uh, subtly or not so subtly lose touch with our own ever becoming truths. So it's a beautiful dance, and I love how art and having a family and having communities that we care about can tether us to like an infinite ever blossoming passion and opportunity to go deeper. And I love, it's so fun to learn. I mean, how lucky are we that we even have the potential to learn forever and take off our masks. And I love that how people like Wayne Shorter, or I think Steve Coleman has said it too, like music is, or jazz is, I dare you, or play what you
Jack
wish for.
and Jack said, jazz is surprise.
Yes.
So, so that's really important. And I'm so glad you mentioned Wayne. You know, we lost one of the great ones, and we were so lucky to have been alive at the same time as Wayne Shorter. And I saw him from 76 until. So I saw him with Weather Report when Jocko was just the new bass player. And then got to do his oral history for Yale, and he graciously gave me 4 hours sitting down telling me stories in that house of his. And so I know that you hold him in the same regard that I do. Um, I want to maybe we'll trade some of the things that we love most about Wayne, because he was such an ideal.
Yes. What a
I
good word.
that was a word that I left that house with. I said, well, he's the ideal.
Well, he's the ideal for me, you know. Um, I do think that he has, I speak of him in the present, you know. Yes, he's,
He is the ideal. He wasn't the ideal. He is the
yes.
ideal.
Yeah, and specifically for me, I don't know what's best for another human being, but for my particular value system and my particular background and the set of interests I have, Beethoven might be my favorite all time musician, but Wayne is like right up there, and Bach and Coltrane, um, but yes, his sense of adventure and his sense of comedy. I think to have humor in music is not so easy, and it doesn't have to show up in like some stereotypical way or over the top obvious way. I mean, there's so many. I mean, humor is such a deep subject, and it can show up in a variety of ways and not even necessarily be received as humor, but still humor. But he has such a clear sense of not just humor, but childlike genius.
Yes.
Is it like Debussy or Mozart? I mean, many people have like the famous quotes about, genius is the ability to carry like a childlike naivete into, you know, older age, you know, responsibly. And, you know, I think Wayne is a shining example of that.
He, I mean, I'll tell this story. I probably told you, but I don't know if I've ever told it on the podcast, but that is, I brought Wayne a gift because it was such a special thing. And I knew of his interest in sci-fi. So I brought him a statuette of the Marvel character Deathlock, who was the original RoboCop idea. They RoboCop ripped off Deathlock, and they paid off, you know, for that intellectual property. But when I handed it to Wayne, he lit up like a kid on Christmas. And he said, "Honey, look at this. I know where this is going to go." And he was just so excited because I knew he had collected statuettes, and I knew that he had dragon stuff, and I knew that he had fairies and nymphs and things like that. But I also knew he was a sci-fi guy. And it kind of linked us like right away. And you can find this interview audio and transcript, by the way, at yale.edu. But he talked about growing up in Newark, and since they had empty fields, they would their imagination, he and his brother would go run out in this field, and he'd say, "I'm with the wolf man," and his brother would say, "No, I'm the wolf man." And it was just, I could just see the whole thing. It's a wonderful, very chronological interview, until I mentioned what was the concept for Weather Report. And then the whole thing goes conceptual and very deep. But you know, he said it was to create vignettes.
Hmm.
And that kind of is almost all of their music. Each one is a vignette.
I love
Harlequin,
that.
you know, Predator. You know, there's so many. Um, what are your favorite Wayne pieces?
Oh, wow. I don't think I can answer that. Um, yeah, I
What
can't
if
answer
I
that.
threw, I'll throw a couple at you.
Hmm.
Fall.
That's way up there for me.
Mm.
Yeah. That is, yeah, that is actually the only Wayne song I've currently arranged,
Oh, okay.
you know, and I play just ceaseless Wayne compositions and love them all, but that's one of my favorites. You know, it's interesting, you know, his second wife, Anna Maria, and the composition Anna Maria, being such, I'm like fanatically into Wayne and all the musicians that he played with.
Of
So
course.
I love studying everything. And right now I've been like enjoying like the outtakes of Bitches Brew.
Hmm.
And there's all these like hints of that song, Anna Maria. And then I I don't remember the name, but it's on one of those Blue Note albums right around that same time. I don't think it's 1969. It might be 1970. So it's either like Odyssey of Iska, or the album right before that or after that on Blue Note of Wayne Shorter's. And he has another composition not named Anna Maria, but it's Anna Maria. And then shortly thereafter, then he has the CBS album featuring Milton Nascimento, and then boom, it's the official composition named Anna Maria. And so I also love that whether it's Wayne or any, you know, incredibly epic, prodigious musician, you know, like Bach would do it a lot. You
Zappa.
know, Zappa, yes. Many people without, you know, it's not coming from like a place of like laziness, but this is like their
They're
their being.
obsessed. It's their obsessions.
Yeah,
He's obsessed with the Uncle Meat theme. He's, you know, he wants to hear it played a million different ways. It's so much fun. It's
yeah,
just such a sense of fun and adventure, as you say.
yeah,
And yeah, you want to
yeah.
write new, but there's certain things that like I know show up in my stuff that are just like, I mean, Cecil Taylor once heard a solo flute piece of mine. He said, Man, you really have a very strong song. You know, the song in you is strong. It's like, yeah, there's certain things that you really like because they're interesting to you, not because you're lazy. You're right.
Yeah, I think it could be compared to like a family of characters.
Oh yeah.
So it's like we're giving birth to like many generations for those of us that, are lucky to live past our like 20s. It's like we have this musical, families like, so we have like, you know, uh, grandchildren and great grandchildren of like themes and, progressions and tempos. Our relationship to tempo is fascinating. And so it's like we have this relationship with this, multi-dimensional thing. And so I think it's kind of like, it's one movie, but with like, endless, um, volumes or whatever, if that makes any sense. That's another way that I think I could describe it as.
You're such an accomplished arranger, and I wanted to ask you about your concept of orchestration,
Hmm.
how you make decisions on choices for the three-dimensional picture that would be a multi-instrumental arrangement, and really how it comes to you. Do you hear it and then you go make it happen, or is it something as you're working with the materials, you're thinking, well, I know I have 16 bars to work with here. What am I going to make happen? A little
Yeah,
bit
both.
about that.
Yeah, both. Both of those that you say. So when I hear something, anytime I hear anything, whether it's something that's already been released or something that's a demo, I always hear stuff on top of it. I hear, I hear a lot of different things. Some of it I just hear for fun because it's just fun to hear shit. And
Hmm.
excuse my language, it's just fun to hear stuff and kind of just be in dialogue. It's so fun. It's like going on a safari. And then sometimes, yes, then we'll add my conscious brain to it. So I'm a person like Ravel says, music is emotional first and intellectual second. So I'm so thankful for my brain. I love my brain. I try to cultivate my brain and my thoughts and my ability to use my thoughts. But to me, it's all about, heart and emotion first. And then I train my brain to be able to, further amplify my heart and emotions and, develop technique to do that. Um, so for me, it's all about being of service. If I'm arranging, especially for a client or for somebody else,
Yes, you're in
um,
service now. That's a very interesting point. You are in service to someone else's idea. What do you do?
I acknowledge that most of the time I'm being hired because they want me. They don't want just any arranger, so that's something. But there's a lot of interpretation there, so I try to be as aware as I can. Like, okay, well, how much me do they want me to be? And sometimes I'll even ask them. I'm like, look it, not because I'm full of myself or something like that. I'm not so impressed with myself, but to be really clear, do you want me to be a 10 out of 10 creative in this context or 6 out of 10? Because we can do that. We can, what do you want? And so I try to manage expectations with people, starting with myself. So when I say be of service, if it's a recording or a song, I want to be of service to my perception of the song. I want to be of service to the client, if there's a client, and I want to be of service to the musicians and like the context that's going to be, played and performed or recorded. I undoubtedly I subscribe to Duke Ellington's and many people like John Williams, the film composer, their approach of writing for the specific players in their ensemble, um,
100%.
specifically, it's just really meaning to celebrate the fullness of all these players, and I love it when Miles Davis would say, like, a good leader will make not just the strengths of each of the individuals a strength for the context of the group, but their weaknesses too. And so I never want to shame anybody or ask somebody to be somebody that they're not. And so I just want to celebrate as much reality as possible. So I want to be of service to all these things, and I see myself as just trying to be a steward, a doula.
Mm.
And so, in one context, maybe what I'm supposed to do is actually have a lot of variety and a lot of diversity of feels and emotions and textures, and that is allowed, So, if I'm just left up to my own devices, like my album, I mean, that's really the first time that I was left up to my own devices. And so, I wasn't, I did get one small ask from one person that will remain nameless, um, involved with the birthing of the album. And it was a totally fine ask, but I said, no, I really have to just see it how I want to see it. But if I'm being hired to work for somebody, then I celebrate. Okay, that's what the context is. I don't want to fight that. I want to, so like I say, be of service. And so sometimes I feel like there's what the client is asking and then what the song is asking, and they might not necessarily be completely simpatico. And that's something that I feel like I'm being tasked with to make sense of. So it's about pacing, and I think that's a big deal. Like, what's the story being told? Is this just candy music? Sometimes I will be hired to make what I refer to as, like, candy music.
Candy
um,
music. Yeah.
I mean, that's okay.
Mhm.
I think that's valid too. In my, so I think you see where I'm going with this. It's like trying to be as aware as possible. What's the context I'm dealing with? And then out of that awareness or lack of awareness, I do my best to be of service and have fun. Fun is underrated.
Oh, that's so true. Fun is underrated. Fun is very important. Playfulness is very important. It's why I still love just improvising with people and just sort of letting something and a conversation emerge or a duality emerge that you're just sort of listening and doing at the same time. And it's so fully engaged. Um, that to me, then you can use that and form a band out of that, or write for that. And it's so interesting to think about. Like for me, I've always wanted to do with you some just like viola and gongs.
Yes, let's do it.
You know what I mean? And
Yes.
I'm really into long tones now. And I've just been trying to appreciate slower. Well, I mean, I just do appreciate slower, more environmental, more atmospheric work.
Don't you think slow is fast and fast is slow?
Yeah, I'm at that point now where it is flipping. Yeah. Yeah, slow is deep also. And also I brought up recently to somebody on the show that, Stravinsky conducting his own work at the end of his life and was so controversial at the time because his tempi were slow. Think about that for a second. That's heavy, right?
Yeah.
The composer now is not, and you couldn't say, I wouldn't be so crass to say it was self-indulgent. No, I just feel like it happened to me. I hit my 50s and I just was into Feldman and I was just into, long tones and decay, you
I,
know?
I like slow music.
Yeah.
My favorite. I play music with a lot of people that can play fast.
Right.
I don't particularly like to play fast. I really like meditative, spacious, slow music. As Sun Ra says, space is the place. Not that space necessarily, I mean, space can mean anything, but I consciously like leaving open space in everything I do because I feel like that gives the listener, starting with myself being the first listener, space to space out and to fill that space or not however I want. But if it's not there, then there's no chance. I feel like if I'm not giving the listener, as I say, starting with myself, space to interpret and have like their own room, it's like having a house and then having empty space to invite someone's visiting and they can
Mhm.
fill that space or not however they want, but I want to give them that opportunity.
100%. That's what it is. And performer involvement, it's so funny when you look across, we talk about the classical thing. Okay, I came up and I probably told you this story, but I had an argument with Pierre Boulez at a master class where he took questions and no one was asking questions. And I was brought there by my composition professor and mentor, Noel DaCosta. And so he looked at me and he's like, go ahead, you're going to ask a question. And I said, Maestro, how do you feel about improvisation in contemporary music? And he dismissed it, saying, oh, we dealt with that in the 60s. Like that was like a hippie thing or like a freedom thing, right? And I said, well, I I want, why do you say that? Because performer involvement is such a big part of an evolving movement in the music. And he said, no, you can't ask people to, in two rehearsals, learn how to play an improvised part and then get out of it and go into a written part. And he had a really interesting point that he was like, son, here's the practical. And I was so young and dumb. I argued with him and really now I look back at what he was talking about, and that was the nexus. That was the moment where it was going to start to become classical players are going to improvise and they are going to think conceptually and they are going to be analytical and they are going to be involved, performer involvement, so that you blur the line between the jazz improviser and the classical player. Both have to have repertoire and vocabulary,
Yeah.
but ultimately you would hope they'd have heard Penderecki, or you would hope they would have heard Xenakis or any of these things. I mean, I always thought as a performer or conductor, you study all the sort of tangential things of that thing to really hone in on that thing. Am I with you?
I mean, 100%. I mean, I could write a book on this subject because I spent my life dealing with this subject. So it's fascinating to hear this story from you. And, I endlessly adore Boulez. Um, I happen to disagree with him on numerous fronts on this topic, but
But what about that pragmatic thing where you, in that
okay, so
world, you
so I
get
can
two
tell you,
rehearsals. If you're
yeah,
lucky, the composer can speak because
right,
that.
yeah. So I've successfully done this
I know
for
you
decades,
have, but it's
for
interesting,
decades
right?
now. So there's a lot of different ways that it can work, and there's a lot of different ways it can't work, and it's all about raising one's awareness of the context. Okay, one rehearsal, great. Two rehearsals, great. Whatever it is, celebrate it. Plan for success by if you want to land on the moon, shoot beyond the moon and set yourself up for success. So, for instance, on the subject of improvisation, let's just say, working with, Western European classical musicians that don't have experience improvising. I've had success with giving them the pitches that I want them to improvise with in a short amount of time. The conductor's, showing where, time is. And it was amazing. And they got it right away. They had fun. Easy. No problem.
It's so interesting because recently I watched the Rick Beato interview of Steve Morse, one of our great guitarists and composers, and he said that you should be able to, and maybe this is exaggerating, but he said you should be able to, in 5 minutes,
Mhm.
explain something that will save you hours of trying to go over certain things if there hasn't been an initial salvo of, listen, this is what it is. Let me just tell you what it is. And then it all folds into how you do it. And that
Yes.
5 minutes is the best 5 minutes of any initial presentation or rehearsal. Like, what are we
Yeah.
trying to accomplish here?
Yes. I pride myself with being able to increasingly make the sheet music so incredibly clear,
Right.
so incredibly inviting, so fun, so inclusive, so positive that people enjoy playing it and actually get it. What is it about? What's the specific concept in this passage or in this movement in this piece? And that's my duty as a music director, composer, conductor. That's why I'm there, is to make, in my opinion, make life enjoyable for people and get to the fun. So figure out the least amount of words, the least amount of, BS or whatever. Just get down to, what's really going on so that we can just have fun. And it really works. And so that approach really works. So I just keep on trying to get better at that approach.
Can I bounce a Quincy Jones quote off you? When I was speaking to him about the Poitiers films and the work that he was doing and the beginnings of the Fender bass usage and the electric piano at that time, and I said, what are you trying to do in any given scene? And this was to do with arranging at large. And he said, I try to give people like 3, 4, 5 things they can hear at any given moment. And I like might have been 4 or 5 even. And I thought that's really interesting because you also have uh, soprano, alto, tenor, bass, 4 things, and this ability to think contrapuntally, I think is so important and something that if you just growing up hearing it, you learn it, but now teaching it, I think again, and I have students for counterpoint and composition, but the idea of just trying to hear it, not trying to write it, but trying to hear it and then write it. I don't know if that's too simple a way of thinking of it, but also imbuing individual lines with characteristics so that they differentiate themselves.
Mm, yeah. Well, I think simplicity is the most complex thing. I think complexity is easy. Um, so is that the end of your question and statement? Were you going to say anything else?
No, really just wanted your response to that idea of like, how complex can you go? And in one situation may be different from another, but
Yeah.
ideally, and I want you to talk specifically about this new recording, which is, what is your 0 to 11 scale on that record? Tell us a little bit about the music that's on this record.
Hmm. Um, Yeah. Now that you're saying, I'm realizing, yeah, my album's not simple enough. Um, I love my album, but yeah, I look forward to maturing enough as a human being and at my craft to where I can say the most captivating things, just like with the solo voice, you know. Um, so on my album, I have some tracks that are just one player, some are orchestral, some I think the shortest track is 35 seconds. Maybe the longest track is around 15 minutes. Um, yeah, there's a lot of duets on there, a lot of six-person ensemble playing. Um, I really love albums and compositions, or I should say, albums that, and I'm still a person that likes albums. You know, I had a fascinating conversation with Flying Lotus a couple of days ago at his house, and he's saying, a lot of people they don't even care about the construct of an album anymore. He's like, you can continue to, but you know, um, make sure to release a lot of music in between, these gargantuan albums. And I really agree with him. And I think both can have validity. Were you gonna say something?
No, I'm enjoying this. I'm agreeing with this by just nodding. Really, it's what I'm doing now as well. So, a single of Smile the Beyond by Mahavishnu, that we're releasing with Rachel Flowers singing. But then there's going to be a big Birds of Fire complete concert, which we've now stretched. It's like a 90-minute program now. So just this idea of, yes, it's a flow. You're going to want to do concept albums. I'm sorry. I'm always going to want to do a concept
Yes.
album. Tell me no, but I can't hear you. It's like they're all concept albums for me. It's always been. It's just it generates itself, doesn't it, Miguel?
Um, I think so, and I think that we attract our tribe that way. But I love what Lotus was telling me because um, he's saying that you can still be you, and speaking to me, and I can still create albums because I do want to create albums, likely for the rest of my life, and I love what it takes to make that complete movie. I'm not just trying to release scenes of a movie. I really, I I love that. I like to read Shakespeare. Like I really
I
I'm
know
into the
exactly what you mean. It's the elevation, the attempt to reach another level of consciousness for me.
to me, it's just so much more impactful
Yeah.
and inspiring. This scene here is beautiful as it is, but it was constructed to give insight to this scene, which is connected to this scene, which is connected to this scene. So each scene, each track individually is beautiful and stands on its own, but it was actually constructed for the context of weaving um, this really beautiful, and we're on a journey, So, in Stravinsky in one of his, there's like the collection of his speaking engagements at Harvard or wherever that was, and at one point in one of those, he talks about he likes with music to play with illusion, and he likes to play with kind of along the lines of what I think you were saying that Jack DeJohnette quote is saying that jazz is a surprise or music is a
Surprise.
surprise,
Yeah.
and so if I'm not mistaken, I feel like that's similar to what Stravinsky was saying in this particular um, lecture he gave at one of those Ivy League schools, and he's talking about how we play with illusion and bringing the listener to different places, and how can I even do that in as expansive of a way if I'm only just releasing singles? But I also want to be in people's consciousness, and I also want to make a living being, you know, genuine, and there's something to being able to release stuff so that um, there is a flow in the context of society. And there's something to that, and you know, to each their own. You know, I don't think there's a right way to be going about this. This is just the way that's resonating with me right now.
I can tell you one thing, Miguel. Over the course of the 3+ years I've done of this podcast, I found out a lot of people around the world think like we do about this.
Hmm.
And that really there is a culture of I love everything that I never knew could exist across, like, Europe and Asia. I hear from people. And please always hit me at bendianmusic.com, because I love that people know that there are British classical composers of interest, that there are soundtrack composers like Gil Malay that you need to check out. And that, then you can also like Eiler and understand his connection to Train and Archie Shepp and this whole other way of
Well,
now moving jazz forward. Um, these people have blown my mind, and I'm so grateful for this podcast for that reason, because people also have come up to me at shows now and say, I love all music. It's so heartening, you know?
it's so encouraging, and you know, my hope. I mean, this is my form of activism. I'm not somebody that wants to just, you know, make my music and not care about what's going on in the world. Um, you know, respect to people that do that too. That's, you know, I think they're prerogative. And respect to people that want to go, um, you know, march in the streets. I think that's also totally needed and valid. My form of activism is putting it into the music and studying what's going on in the world from as many different standpoints as I can, not just from one viewpoint or one vantage point, but and then putting my feelings into the music. And you know, people can think whatever they want about that, but that's truly, you know, what's in my heart, and that's, you know, I think a lot can be done with one-on-one dialogues too. I think that for the type of sensitivity and type of understanding that I'm looking to have with people, I'd rather have one-on-one dialogues with people, you know, with, you know, world matters, than going on social media and saying my 2 cents that people can easily misunderstand and take a bunch of different directions. But so I'm choosing to put it in the music, and that's what's resonating with me at this moment.
That's very cool. So what do you think, Miguel? You're a big thinker, and I know that when someone tells me, oh, I'm going to do 3 volumes of something, I go, well, big respect. Because I know that it's a lot to undertake, but it's also there's a greater need for me in some ways more than ever to be aware of form on a micro level and a macro level. And I try to talk about that a lot with my students, of the music making on the micro level, on the macro level, because you can listen in, but you have to be able to step back also and realize, some level of objectivity. Did I get it, or did I overdo it?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it goes back to, who's running the show. But I do think that I'll never be able to recover from the music that I grew up hearing that was carefully arranged in horror movies. The Bartok showing up in The Shining. Those are just really deep, deep deep-seated, I think, colorful, vivid memories. And I bemoan the loss of the live orchestra for television shows and sort of where that's gone because we were so spoiled.
Hmm. Right on.
So what's next for you, Miguel?
I'm writing what was originally going to be a violin concerto for one of my favorite non-classical orchestras in America. They're called New Deco Ensemble out of Miami, Florida. And as I started writing it, I'm like, you know what? I don't even want this to be like a violin concerto that's like featuring me like throughout. I would maybe love to do that someday, but as I got deeper into the composition, I realized no, these guys really specialize in improvisation, and there's a lot of great soloists in this 40-piece chamber orchestra. Um, I want to really feature a lot of people, and so I don't have a lot of time to write it, and so I've also been going through hundreds of compositions that I have that are unreleased and see if I want to incorporate some sections of those. And so I've been really enjoying, Greg, just writing this piece. I mean, I'm infatuated with the orchestra. So anytime I get to write for orchestra or conduct or, do something with the orchestra, it's always fun. And then to be able to be commissioned to write my own original 25-minute work, I mean, I'm in heaven. So the fact that I don't have as much time as I would seemingly ideally want, I'm just choosing to see that as a positive and to see that as a good opportunity for me to be kind of forced to come up with a new way, still within scope of being genuine and soulful. Um, how can I do this? And so I've been enjoying it and trying to learn about some of the specific players. That's also an interesting thing to learn. I mean, I know a couple of the string players, um, but to write for an orchestra that I don't intimately know well. So I'm just looking at their videos and asking the people that run the orchestra, a myriad of questions. And so that's the main thing. And then I'm helping Lotus finish up his film score right now, Flying Lotus, for his film called Ash, which he directed and he's producing the score for. And then, yeah, I'm going to go back to Iceland. I fell in love with Iceland. And
Oh, I've been, yes.
so that's just completely took a hold of me. Just it's such a magical place. And when you were talking about Wayne Shorter some 30 minutes ago or whatever, and how he had like some magical gnomes or whatever, I instantaneously thought of the people in Iceland that actually do believe in fairies. There's like
It's totally real, folks. Yeah.
yeah, like in not just in Iceland but in Scandinavian countries and
Word.
so, and I'm 32% West African, but I also have a bunch of Scandinavian blood. And so, going to some of these countries for the first time, it's definitely awakening something ancestral. And so, I love humor, and I find that every community has their own version of humor, and I can appreciate it all. But there's a very specific type of sense of humor over there in Iceland and Reykjavik, and so that's been really interesting. And people are so intelligent over there, and it's a bath culture, and so like we were going to the like same bathhouse every day that Bjork goes to, and just going there every day is just like I've never been so healthy and feeling so good. Um, so I can't wait to go back over there. And
I had supernatural shit happen to me in
yeah,
Iceland. Yeah, I had a couple of incidences which are I was provably awake and not in any
hmm,
other form of consciousness, and I was being choked while sleeping in this house
wow.
on like a being choked by a basically like felt like a ghost.
Mm,
And it was really strange because I knew like there was some heavy shit that went down in Iceland because they were so into the witch thing too that one guy showed me this pit and I looked at it and it was perfectly rectangular and I said, "What is that?" And he said, "Oh yeah, that's where they used to drown witches." And it was still there.
wow.
And I'm like, "Oh yeah, this is some shit. This is
Oh,
going
wow.
on." You know what I mean? Like in your history.
Yeah.
Vatnajökull was a glacier that inspired me. Also, the Snæfellsjökull, which I think is the entrance to hell in their
Wow.
mythology. And you
Oh,
know, there are certain ley lines that go on through Iceland. Iceland is heavy, man.
yeah. In between tectonic plates too. So there's like certain specific energy that's coming up there that, you don't find anywhere else in the world. And then like the Northern Lights. I mean, it it's a long list of I think a magical aspects of it. So I fell completely in love with Iceland.
Yeah, man.
Definitely going back, and there's Bjork's music director is starting a new music festival, so I'm gonna do that. And
You're going to work
you
with Bjork?
I would love to. No plans as of yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if something like that happens. But
That would be
uh,
great. Bjork is brilliant,
yeah,
you know. Did you see her biophilia with the choir and percussion and electronics? That's something. That is it's amazing.
no, I didn't. But I've been staying with the person who's the nephew of the person that runs that choir. So
Icelandic Women's Choir, right?
yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
incredible group. And they're
yeah,
all moving and they're all singing these parts and her vocal arranging or arrangements are amazing. Yeah.
very passionate person. Yeah,
Well, and getting it done, you know. I mean, being herself for that long, that I mean, that's a model.
yeah,
You know, that's
yeah. And
something to
I'm
aspire to.
Yeah, and I don't know her history intimately, but I know enough about her and her music, besides knowing that she's utterly brilliant, but to know that, like many great human beings, she's not afraid of saying no. I feel like we really have to know what to say no to, and we can really be saying a bigger yes by saying no to certain things.
Yeah. Did you ever
She's
listen to
empowered.
Kate Bush, Miguel?
I'm just starting to get into her now, just in the last couple months, actually. It's funny you say that.
Well, I thought that would be an area you would enjoy. She's really running the show in a different way. And really the whole sound world thing and vignettes. And now that she's become more popular because of the resurgence of one of her songs, the back catalog, particularly The Dreaming and Never Forever, are just masterworks.
Mm.
And vocal arranging and vocal performance, I mean, her range at that point is ridiculous.
Hmm.
And she was doing all of that and painting a picture every time.
Hmm.
And now you're just starting to check her out. That's great.
Yeah. It's pretty
Like our
mind
blind,
blowing.
it's our blind spots. Like the other day, I was like, I got to get into more Messiaen.
Oh yeah.
There's always more.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm not somebody that will ever shame somebody or feel bad for not being hip to some amazing, musician or,
Yeah, you sent me
director.
some cool ones. Yeah.
Because we've been checking out other cool stuff. So it's not like we've been like wasting our time. It's just that
Mhm.
we've been going deep in other areas.
There are so many composers that we are not even getting a taste of.
You know
And
who's
but
the one
then
that I'm obsessed with? The newest one. Did I text you about Suk Chin?
yes, you did.
Yeah.
Very deep. Do you listen to Tan Dun?
A little bit, a
Yeah.
little bit. Yeah.
Takamitsu was huge for me,
Mm,
sort of the East looking at Debussy and Ravel. And it was just always so beautiful and such a collision. I got to see him in person and I got to hear these pieces live. And it's so amazing but so rare to hear these pieces perform live, and that's something I bemoan
yeah.
because if you could see Varese played live and it becomes three-dimensional, if you can see the Ives Fourth live, it's totally three-dimensional. There's side, there's back,
Mm.
and there's, the groupings. It's all designed big time.
Hmm.
So I applaud your going for the big gesture, buddy.
Oh, thank you. It's sincere, but what allows me to do it, one of the things that allows me to do it and enjoy it, the process, and also feel like it's genuine and not like a gimmick or something, is that I'm pulling from so much. So it's like I go through my various periods of, development and creation and just, what I'm inspired by and learning about in any particular season in my life, and I'm creating compositions and I'm recording, and I have a clear narrative of what I'm trying to create with like Jardin Mystique, but it's not like I'm going to the studio and being like, okay, we have to perfect these 5 compositions today. I just go to the studio and I record a bunch of my compositions and just have fun with them and don't worry about perfecting them. I don't do more than, I mean, maybe I did 3 takes on a couple of them, but usually it's just 1 or 2 takes and just keep it easy breezy. And, I'm doing a lot of editing later of just like sections and then orchestrating on top. Um, so, I have the foundation of everything there. That's why I said, it's that length. It's not like
Yes.
an arbitrary length or something.
Yeah, that's cool. I love it. I like going with big pieces, and yet I've done miniatures as well.
Mm.
I think there's a lot to be said for getting something to happen in 1 minute,
Yes. Yes.
right? And it has a different meaning, and it's just time is different.
Yeah. Yeah. Metabolism. It makes me think of the word metabolism.
Hmm.
And pacing. So
Pacing
that's
too.
what I
Yeah.
was saying earlier. Like, okay, well, this scene leads to this scene, but each scene is also can be enjoyed, by itself as a standalone piece. But then, kind of tangential to that is, metabolism. And so, can something be so succinct that it doesn't feel trite or missing anything? But and I like to compare stuff to food too. So there's a
Mhm.
time and place where you just want like 1 or 2 bites of something, and that's really perfect, and there's nothing missing from that.
That's a really good analogy, actually. Yeah. I make food analogies all the time with my students. I warn them. I'm like, I'm a foodie, so I'm going to be comparing a lot of this stuff to food. Because salt content matters when you put it in, post or pre or post. Yeah, Miguel.
Yes, it's so good to see you. And next time you're in LA, we have to record some improvisations. And I hope, in addition to the viola, that you would let me bring my electric violin with effects because I've been really enjoying working on that stuff, and I'm getting it to a place where I'm really, really proud of it.
Yeah, you did tell me about that, and we never got the chance to do it last
I think you
time.
gave me a chance. I think you gave me a chance, and I couldn't make it happen.
You couldn't. Yeah. And yeah, Alex Klein, shout out to him. He was involved as well. He's the gong master. So, right, he's the metal master. That's his Marvel character. And we did the Requiem for Jack Kirby comic book album with him and Nels, his brother, and Joel Hamilton, and we got Kirby art. And Alex was drawn in such a way that he was like the metal master. It was great.
Jeez.
Have you ever seen the full setup?
I've seen pictures,
Yeah.
and when you say full, I'm just imagining something bigger than I've seen. I
It's
mean, like a whole
racks,
room. Yeah,
all of the bells, all of the chimes, all of
yeah.
it's incredible. So yeah, we
I
recorded duets there.
wow.
Yeah. It's just one of the great percussionists of the world.
Yes.
And we got to work together with him, you and I, with my on my 50th birthday at the Baked Potato back
Yeah.
10 years
Yeah.
ago.
Yes.
That's how we met through Lauren Baba.
Yes.
Remember that?
Yes. I was conflating, or I wasn't conflating two. I thought we had two experiences, but that was the same experience. Was your 50th? Yes,
Yeah.
and also Monachion played cello.
The- Artyom, yeah. And and the rehearsals were memorably succinct. It's
Hmm.
like you guys just got it. You played every idea was like you were like, yeah, yeah, okay, let's try that. Like you just I love that in a collaboration where, the enthusiasm for let's try that and then maybe we'll amend it, but the idea of like the playing of jars, which is very contrapuntal, and then the walking thing, which is very much kind of a dance piece string trio, but both involving counterpoint and both involving rhythm. And the string trio for me is such a perfect grouping.
Hmm.
I love it. I mean, really, almost more than the string quartet.
Yeah, I wonder what are some of the reasons why there are so few string trio pieces written compared to string quartet. I mean, I have my own theories. What's your theory?
I honestly don't think I want to go up any higher and want a fourth voice when I can well, I have a piece for viola and cello that's based on the Ravel, that's just on the Ravel duo,
Mm,
where the viola and the cello just create four things.
mm,
Not a problem.
mm,
So, and it's kind of almost more interesting because it's just what can you do with two people? A lot.
mm,
With
mm.
polyphonic instruments, yeah, a lot,
Hmm.
right? So,
Oh
so,
yeah.
th so thinking of register, thinking of identities of parts.
Hmm.
I love string trio, and Webern, I think, has one of the great string trios.
Mm,
So that he's always been a model for me in
mm,
terms of how I think of miniature and also just, a little is a lot.
mm. Right on.
You know that.
I'm learning that. I mean, I'm interested in trying to say the most I can with little. And my theory is if I can become so aware of the weight and what does this mean, just like one note, like BB King is great, just one note, just being able to really master one note, then I feel like I can say more with less, and it's going to mean more. I don't want to be frivolous.
No.
It's fun. It's like a fun way of like calling me out uh, on my stuff. It's like I really do want to mean what I say, and what better way than to try to open up my sincerity and my
Clarity.
awareness, clarity.
Clarity was a word that you
Yeah,
use that I think is so key. Clarity of intent,
that's it.
right?
Yeah,
If it-
I think everything comes back down to that actually. Yeah, depth of intention and knowing one's why. I've been thinking a lot about that. That helps me get to that place of clarity, doing the things that actually help me, you know, excavate and create that clarity.
Well, Miguel, let's leave it there. That's a good place to leave it. Always a
It's so good
pleasure.
to see you, Greg. I love speaking with you. I feel so lucky anytime I get to speak with you. I really, really adore you. Thank you so much for having me, and let's
Right
make some
back
music.
at you. Back at you. Really, man. And you're doing great stuff. And everybody should check out your recording. Where is it available, Miguel?
It's available on most platforms. If you go to my website, miguelatwoodferguson.com, that's one place where you have access to all the different platforms. It's available digital and CD and vinyl. And it's called Les Jardin Mystique Volume 1. And Volume 2 will be out probably in 2 years from now. And then Volume 3, another 2 years after that. But yeah, MiguelAtwoodFerguson.com, MiguelAtwoodFerguson.com. And yeah, it's out. It's out and about. It's getting a lot of love. I'm surprised that people are actually listening to it. I didn't actually expect people to listen to it.
Oh, okay. Well, people are listening to it.
Yeah,
People are
some people.
listening. People are
Some people.
paying attention to Brain Feeder. I mean, Genevieve's thing is ridiculous.
Mm,
Unbelievable stuff. Lewis Cole, Knower.
yeah.
There's so much stuff happening. So it's great that Brain Feeder is behind what you're doing. And shout out to Flying Lotus, for making these things available to a wider audience because personal now means a lot. Personal means a lot right now.
Mm, right on, Greg.
You know what I mean? Its value has gone up.
Personal.
Personal,
Yeah,
making it personal has
yeah.
gone up in value.
I'm so encouraged to hear you say that.
That's what I'm working with. I try to do it and I try to bring it out and all my students encourage them to have the confidence to do that.
Yeah,
Otherwise
I
we
think
don't
that.
get anywhere, like or know why things work and utilize them in your way. But
Yeah, but especially if we define that word personal in like an infinite way, because I think we run into trouble if we start defining ourselves as like, oh yeah, I'm just a man. I just look like this. We're not static. My point. There's so much more to us if we put in the work and continually like redefine ourselves, go deeper. So I just think it's really important to also you know teach people that, because I don't think people realize that they're carrying around a lot, many more goodies than they're aware of, in my opinion.
well, yeah, it's the internet's helping.
Mm,
Internet's helping. I find young people know more than I expect them to know currently. It's a
mm.
good crop, good current crop showing uh, good possibilities for actually paying attention to the right stuff that happened in the past and thinking it's cool again. You
Right
know,
on. I'm
that
so.
that that's really cool, actually, the 30, 40-year law.
Hmm.
40 years now is like more important. 50th anniversaries of stuff from 73, 74 now. That shit is on fire.
It really is.
So like if you don't think 50 years ago there wasn't something happening, get yourself Birds of Fire, get yourself, Chick Corea, get yourself Herbie, Headhunters. It's crazy what's going on at that time. So yeah, that's become classical music for us, right? Eastern classical.
Yes, yes. Oh my gosh.
Oh, so good to talk to you.
So good to talk to you, as
Thanks for
always.
taking the time.
Yeah.
And folks,
Thank you
that's
so much, Todd.
Miguel Atwood-Ferguson has been my guest, and we've had a pleasurable chat here. And you can reach me at bendianmusic.com. Hit us on Patreon, like and subscribe. We got more of these chats coming. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Miguel.
Thank you so much, Greg.